For this next project, we're going to be transferring an image to Baltic birch using the DOS SuperSauce. The SuperSauce, I've already shown you on the video here how to mix that up. You're using the concentrate and diluting it with isopropyl alcohol, and you have put a label on the bottle so that now you're ready to use it. And this must be prepared about a day before you're going to use it. It keeps for a long, long time, so don't worry about shelf life. The tools that you're going to need in addition to the SuperSauce are some sandpaper, a brayer, a paintbrush, a sponge brush, a tack cloth to remove sawdust from the wood, and a little bit of acrylic paint if you would like that. Also, I do use the gloves for this process because I don't like to get that SuperSauce on my hands. To begin with, we're going to sand our birch. Now, the box that I have here was made by a woodworker, and when you have these made, you need to make sure that there are no defects in the surface, otherwise those will show in your image. One of the things I like to do is to build it as a box, because what that does, it allows me to wrap my image around the edges, and then it's ready to hang on the wall. I don't have to worry about framing it. But as you begin, you might choose to simply get some half-inch birch planks made, any other smooth wood. I like the birch because this is a very, very tight grain and you can sand it very smooth. First thing we're going to do is sand the box until it's very, very smooth. Sometimes I like to do this with a random orbital electric sander outside if the box happens to be particularly rough. Every piece of birch will have a different amount of grain to it. This one happens to be extremely smooth. Then you're going to use a tack cloth and dust off all of that extra sawdust, because if you leave that on, you're going to end up with that white stuff being in your image. So you want to make sure that you've got all of this sawdust off of here. Next, I'm going to run a little bit of black paint around the edge of this box, because when the transfer is done, sometimes there's a little bit of this edge that shows. And I'd rather have it look a little bit more natural by doing this edge touch-up before I do my transfer. And that way it will blend into the image and I won't risk damaging the image if I tried to touch it up afterwards. So we're just putting a little bit of paint around these edges. You don't have to be too fussy with it. If your image is a bright color, why you would use something else other than black, but the image that I'm going to be transferring is quite dark. Also do these vertical edges. And the pieces that I'm going to cut to transfer are plenty wide, so I don't have to worry about the back side down here. And just feather it out a little bit. So that's going to become part of the image. It also gives a bit of a vignette. If you wanted to, you could even airbrush this paint on and really create a nice transition to your image. You'll see when we transfer this why this is being done. All right, well, we'll let that dry for a minute. Okay, now that we have our print imaged, and this one happens to be printed on the HP printer, and it is imaged on the DOS Classic Transfer film, which is the film that you need to use in order for this process to work. So you're going to position your film on top of the box so that when you roll it down, you're certain that it will be square on the box. Then the trick that I do is I align another box to the end and make a mark underneath so you know where to line it up again. Then take some blue tape and tape the film down to the guide box. Okay, then take a cardboard tube and roll your print, which now has the ink side down, the dull side. Roll it back onto the guide box. And we'll just set that aside for a minute. And we'll make sure that all of the paint that we did around the edges here is dry. Of course, you've also trimmed your pieces that are going to be used for the sides of these boxes. And there are 4 of those, and those are ready to be used. So now we're going to go ahead and put our SuperSauce on the top of this box. All right, we have our box ready, and we can go ahead now and open up the Das SuperSauce that's been mixed up from the concentrate. And again, this is a little bit like warm syrup. Going to paint it on top of the birch and giving it a nice even coat. And you do want to do this with adequate ventilation, and you should wear gloves. But just for this demonstration, I'm not, so that it's a little bit easier for me to work and do this demonstration. You're going to notice that this sauce soaks into the wood. The goal is to get a nice even coat on that eventually will sit on the surface without evaporating. So you're going to go back and forth across this a number of times. Make certain that there are no puddles. And after you do a few, you kind of get the hang of it. This is an especially nice process because the image goes right onto the wood. There isn't any other skin or decal or any other product other than the ink and the wood that's left after this thing begins to dry. And I'm doing this in real time so that you can see how many times I go across it. Rather than stopping and starting, I want you to be able to tell exactly what is the proper technique for getting this to go down smoothly. This is beginning to soak in now. And because the thickener has not thickener, but the concentrate has made this alcohol thick, so it's not evaporating like it would if you just use alcohol. And alcohol by itself is not going to work for this process. You do need to have the thickener in there, the concentrate that makes this alcohol less evaporative. Well, this is looking very nice. And one last time, we're going to go over this. Nice even strokes. Very, very smooth strokes. Look at it sideways, kind of at an angle. Make sure there's no puddling. All right, that's done. Now we're going to place the print back up against here using the guide board. All right, and then we'll just roll this down. You don't want to wait because you don't want that alcohol to begin to evaporate. And use your brayer to smooth the image down, giving it light pressure at first. You don't want a lot of pressure on this. Pressing it too hard would cause the film to skid across the box. Oh, give it a nice, you feel it. Now I can feel here that I've got a couple of pieces of sawdust on there, but given my image, I don't think I'm going to notice that. All right, we're going to take the tape off the guide box. And now we'll move that guide box away. We're going to continue with our hands to smooth this down so that it has good contact everywhere. You can already see that here on these edges, the black painting that I did is going to complement the image. Make sure there's no bubbles in it. Work those out if there are. Okay, this is looking really nice. I think this is going to be a nice transfer. The image that I've chosen is a garden gate, and part of this box is going to be showing through as complementary texture in the image. All right, now we're going to begin by a diagonal corner, lift it up and see whether or not it's released, and it has. And as you pull it backwards, use your hand to make sure that there's been good contact everywhere and none of the image is coming up. If you see something that looks like it isn't fully adhered, you have time to go back and lightly press it down. This is a slow process. You don't want to get anxious pulling it off. If you go too fast, you're going to not have good contact with all of the image. This is coming off very, very nicely. What the SuperSauce does is dissolve the coating that's on the film, and it encapsulates the pigment inks and holds them on the box. You don't want this to go back down. If you were to push this back down on top of the image again now, you would end up picking it up off of the box. You don't want to do that. Okay.